Today's episode of Armed Lutheran Radio is part one of a two-part series we recorded this week for over an hour, and there's just so much good stuff, we decided to make it into two shows.
Bringing you law, gospel, and guns. This is Armed Lutheran Radio.
Hi folks, welcome to Armed Lutheran Radio, a show about guns, hunting, competitive shooting, the natural right of self-defense, and what God's Word says about the issues surrounding gun rights and gun ownership. I'm your host, Lloyd Bailey, the Armed Lutheran, and this is episode number 243. And we're joined once again by our good friend, the pistol-packing padre, Pastor John Bennett. Pastor, welcome back.
Thank you, Lloyd. It's always fun to do this, even when it seems like the whole world is burning down and going crazy as we speak.
Well, as you said, when the world's burning down, sometimes you just got to grab a bag of Cheetos and watch it burn, right?
Yes. And if you are so inclined, having a glass of good whiskey in your hand always is a positive too.
Doesn't hurt. And welcome back to all of those of you who are joining us today. Thank you for making Armed Lutheran Radio a part of your week again this week, and welcome to our new listeners. Those of you who have stumbled upon this show and wonder what the heck you're listening to, I hope you enjoy what you hear today, and you'll come back and listen again. Before we get started, we are going to talk about some of the craziness going on in the world. But before we do that, I want to thank the members of the Reformation Gun Club. This show is made possible by the awesome members of the Reformation Gun Club. People like Dallas from Severance, Colorado, Daniel from Chehalis, Washington, the disreputable Bartlett, Mark from St. Paul, Minnesota, Turbo 1889, and one of our longest serving members, Brian from Riverton, Wyoming. Thank you all so much for your support. Armed Lutheran Radio is listener funded. We don't have any advertising. We don't have any sponsors. We rely on the generosity of these good people to keep the lights on here. If you'd like to help, if you would like to check it out and find out more, visit armedlutheran.us/gun club. Or look for a link in the show notes for this or any of our previous episodes. All right, so I thought the election drama was winding down, and I'd made some notes based on how I thought things were going, and then Trump's legal team came out today in a press conference and released the Kraken, and it's just crazy. So it sounds like they've got all kinds of evidence. There's a process for this, as Ben Shapiro likes to say. It's all moving forward. It's going to court, and it seems like a long shot, but we'll see. So what we're going to focus on today, regardless of the craziness, is going forward, whether Biden wins or not. One thing that happened this week that gave me the idea for today's show, and if you noticed again that the robber barons, the big tech robber barons, as they were called by, who is it, Josh Hawley, the senator from Missouri.
Yes.
The CEOs of Google and Facebook and Twitter were again testifying before a Senate committee this week about censorship and their bias towards the left, which it's entertaining, but is it really going to change anything? I mean, it seemed to me like one side or the other was just, they were alternately raking those guys over the coals or massaging their scrotums. It just, depending on which party was doing the raking or massaging. And I don't think it's going to change anything, but in response to all that censorship and everything that's ramped up, especially as we got closer and closer to the election, we see conservatives looking for alternatives and talking about unplugging or tuning out, trying to break with this crazy toxic culture that we're in the midst of. And if you watch TV or the news, you read stuff in social media, and you find yourself feeling like Theoden standing atop the walls of Helm's Deep and looking out over the armies and...
How did it come to this?
That's how you feel. Just like, how did we get here? Pastor, is the culture war at this point, is it lost? Where are we currently, do you think?
That's a great question. Really, I think that we are at a point in human history where we have one of two choices. We either boldly live completely counter to the culture that surrounds us, or we have to live separate from the culture that surrounds us. Or maybe it's a bit of both. There's this, and this has been going on for the past year or two. I've seen it on Facebook posted by numerous people, of the idea of creating a commune society among Lutherans. We could extend this, since this is Armed Lutheran Radio, we could extend this to, some sort of a commune concept with Second Amendment supporters, that where, we take care of our own. But I don't know if that's quite the answer, because at the end of the day, we are told by Christ to let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father who is in heaven. And we really can't bear witness to Christ in our manner of life if we aren't living among those who reject him.
Right. We can't exactly hide our light under a bushel basket and expect others to come to the light if they can't see it, if we're just separating. It sounds kind of like, I read a little bit of the Benedict Option recently, thinking about planning for this episode and thinking about this episode, and I think that's going maybe a little too far. Separating ourselves, but finding ways. The goal for us has got to be finding ways to separate ourselves to the point, or not completely separate ourselves from the culture, but find ways to do things, like you said, that are counter to the culture, maintaining our values while not drowning in this society that hates us. I've heard some suggest, I'm going to focus on God and family and money in that order, and to heck with everything else. God and family and my job, basically, to support myself and my church and my family members. And I'm not going to be involved in politics or voting anymore. I'm just going to separate myself from it completely. Is there a lesson we can learn from early Christianity where, we have this tendency to think things have never been as bad as they are today? But I mean, if you go back to the early days of the church, I mean, you had Christians being used for, lamp posts in the streets of Rome. So things are a little bit different.
Yes. But we don't have government authorities killing us willy-nilly because of our views, at least not yet. It's, things that I thought would never happen. We see what's taken place in this last year. And I don't want to be so overly optimistic. I do have a strong realistic side to me too, so I have to throw in that qualifier of yet.
Right. Well, and to answer the question that Theoden posed earlier, how did we get to this? I think there's a tendency as well, in addition to thinking, well, things have never been this bad, at the same time, we always seem to think, well, it's just a fad, things will change, the kids will grow out of it, or we'll hear about some craziness with the radical left, and we'll laugh it off like, oh, that's crazy, or they would never do that. And then the next thing you know, the country's in lockdown and people are getting fined for going to church, and we've got mail-in ballots being sent to everybody and their dead cousins. And now the election's been won by a guy who couldn't draw 20 people to a rally and whose most significant accomplishment is remembering his wife's name and having a solid bowel movement. So I'm not sure. I think we on the right tend to respect boundaries and traditions, and we play by the rules. And for some reason, we seem to think that everybody else will too. And that keeps getting us into trouble.
Right. Yeah, And if you give up, if you decide I'm not going to be engaged anymore politically, I'm not going to vote, in the long run, you're only hurting yourself, because then you're leaving your fate in the hands of other people. But when it comes to our faith, if we were under a what's the word I'm looking for? A culture of oppression and persecution, then we look at the scriptures and we gladly bear that burden for Christ. But when it comes to the political side of things, withdrawing isn't going to protect our liberties. Of course, I wouldn't go so far as to say we have to be engaged in a physical fight, but at the end of the day, we still have to be engaged politically. And it's the moral thing to do. If we take a look at, for example, matters concerning the right to life, what good does it do if we say, I'm just tired of it, I give up, I'm just going to cloister myself away from the rest of the world, I'm not going to vote. Well, if a lot of people decided to do that, we wouldn't have pro-life politicians elected to public office. That's just one of the simple examples. And then you can take it to the next step of saying, well, then what happens if they, if we decide to do that, we cloister ourselves away, and the next thing we know, we see our Second Amendment liberties being completely erased because we didn't bother to vote for pro-Second Amendment politicians.
Right.
So it's one of those questions that I think is best answered by taking a look at what happens if we actually do this.
Yeah. Yeah. The ultimate damage that we do, I think, is worse than staying engaged. Now, there's different levels of engagement. Obviously, there are those of us who, like you and I, who are do this podcast and videos and books. There's pastors who engage in the culture daily. There are influencers of different levels. Then you have your average citizen whose your only influence is really the people around you, and that's really maybe what you should focus on. And instead of worrying about what's happening in the news and what's happening in social media, take a break from the news and from tech. Read a book, get outside, exercise, spend time with friends, and share your passion with other people. Take friends to the range, go camping or hunting or hiking with your family. Take your kids to church more importantly than anything else. But maybe the answer is, at a personal level, is to disengage from mainstream media, from social media, from the constant barrage of negative news, and worrying about, and we've gotten to this point where politics is almost like a spectator sport in this country. Like, maybe the thing to do is just, let's take a step back and let's focus on what's around us first. And maybe that's the approach that we should take instead.
Yeah, I agree. And it's, you mentioned that how for many politics has become a spectator sport. And that's exactly how we've gotten to the point that we are today. That, you have they always refer to it as the silent majority, the people that are sitting on the sidelines, the people that, well, they just watch what's going on. And, of course, this last election, you get 38 ballots in the mail for every dead person that used to live at your house. and well, maybe I'll just send them all in. But it's, I think we talked about this last time, that I want the motivated voters to be the ones that are, the one who's motivated enough to go to a polling place and vote in person if they can. But yeah, being a spectator sport, I mean, it's not a sport, but I think that's the most common.
It's a blood sport.
Yeah,
pretty
well,
much.
yeah, that's true. It's yeah, exactly. But because of that, people are not engaged as they used to be. And what's interesting is I just before we started recording this, about 20 minutes before that, I had seen a Facebook story. I believe it was either Kentucky or Tennessee, where there was this corrupt city government, and there was a bunch of vets that had returned from World War II, and they had an election where they had the police basically were the stormtroopers for the city government, and even shot one person when he refused to be turned away from a polling place. So they ended up, a bunch of these veterans ended up breaking into the National Guard Armory, taking a bunch of guns, and going toe-to-toe with the cops. So we don't have...
Let's hope it doesn't.
We don't have people that are that engaged in politics anymore. They just like to sit from their computers and sling mud at people on Facebook and Twitter.
Keyboard commandos abound, apparently.
Yes, and the keyboard commandos, most of them, they live in mommy's basement eating Hot Pockets, I guess.
Meal Team 6. If what's going on in the culture is getting you down, there's an easy way to change that. There was, I don't know, several years ago, we dropped cable, and we stopped watching the nightly news, even the local news, and just not having that constant bombardment of all the negative is a huge, huge change in your life. It's amazing how much we've come to rely on the 24-hour news cycle. One of the things that in Rob Dreyer's book, The Benedict Option, the one chapter that I kind of focused on, he was talking about man and machine, about how technology used to be in service to us, and it's become where we're almost enslaved by it.
Yes.
You can't, we're constantly in front of a computer. We're constantly carrying around or looking at our mobile devices. We're constantly watching, the 24-hour news cycle. And I think more people need to just sort of take a break from that and focus on the stuff around you, your family primarily, and then branch out from there. Your church family, your friends and neighbors, and focus on those things, and not so much on what's happening on the nightly news every night and getting hacked off every evening because you have to look at Nancy Pelosi's face.
Yeah. In many ways, it seems as if our society has become so self-absorbed that they can only focus on what matters to them, and anything that they come across that's contrary to what matters to them does nothing but infuriate them, or to use the typical millennial term, it triggers them. Right. So it's really sad to see how, like you said, technology that was something that was a beneficial tool to us, and in many ways it still is, depending on what type of technology we're talking about, especially when it comes to medical technology, but and specifically social media, that has really caused us, I believe, as a society to devolve. Just a very simple example. How many nasty, horrible things would your average leftist beta male soy boy say on Facebook or Twitter? But if they saw you face to face, they probably wet their pants before they would say that directly to you. It used to be that, I'm trying to think of the old saying, well, if you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all. Of course, that from the movie Bambi, that's what I think it was the skunk's dad said to him or something. I don't remember. I haven't watched that movie in forever.
Whoever it was good advice.
Yes, it's good advice. Treat others with the same kind of respect and kindness that you would like to be treated with. And we could kind of, to bring this into a biblical perspective, we could summarize this simply as love your neighbor as yourself. Would you say those kind of nasty, horrible, disgusting things about yourself? Well, if you would, then perhaps there's a good psychologist I could recommend. But to treat, it comes down to having that respect for our fellow man on the basis of our shared humanity.
You remember the old saying, do you kiss your mom with that mouth?
Yes.
Right? So you say something horrible about somebody, and the response may have been in times past, you kiss your mom with that mouth. In other words, would you say those kinds of things? How would you say those kinds of things where your mom can hear?
Right.
Nowadays, maybe they do, but I think we've lost something if we've gotten to the point where everybody is acting like this. And social media makes it too easy. Like you said, the anonymity of Twitter or Facebook, where you're not facing somebody that you disagree with face to face, and you're not having a conversation with them. You're trying to score points with nasty rhetoric and ad hominem attacks, knowing that you're not going to get punched in the nose.
Yeah.
And if we had a way to virtually punch people in the nose, or maybe send them an electric shock, maybe it would clean up social media.
Maybe. We could all dream, can't we?
Could we get the electric chair emoji? Just add that in, where if you don't like what somebody says, if somebody says something really nasty, if they're really ugly to somebody else, then you push the button and they get a little shock. Unfortunately, everybody would be shocking each other, and it would lose all of its effectiveness.
Yes, and if you left Twitter and Facebook in charge of those decisions, they'd just be, shocking all the conservatives.
Yeah, exactly. Every time you post something about a conservative viewpoint, a traditional Christian viewpoint, you just get shocked automatically without even...
You offended someone, so we're going to shock you.
Yes, exactly.
That's also one of the very sad things of how our society has devolved in the last 20 years, where the greatest sin that you could commit is offending someone. You do not have the right to not be offended. That doesn't exist.
Right. And we've talked about this before, about how great this technology today is, and how it's supposed to be allowing us to, reconnect with people and connect in ways that were never possible before, because we were separated by, I live 1,000 miles away from family. You live 1,000 miles away from your family. The idea back in 100 years ago that you could just, turn on a little device in your, carry around a little device in your pocket and send a message to your family members across the country. 100 years ago, 50 years ago was just, mind-boggling. Now it's simple. Now it's easy. But at the same time, we're divided. We're not connected in a way that is healthy.
No, we're not. It's something that should have brought closeness, has only created greater division. Now, to be fair, in many ways, it has created more closeness. You think of the conversations you can have with your spouse when they are away from you, as opposed to, you go back to even when you had, I can remember growing up with a telephone. If you were traveling out of state, well, you didn't really call on the phone because, dang it cost a lot for that long distance phone call.
Right.
So, now the idea of a long distance phone call has become non-existent with the age of the cell phone.
Yeah.
But
for all the good that technology has brought us, and this is one of the points that Dreher makes, is, there's all this the good side, but we always fail to recognize or address the negative side of the ways technology comes to play in our lives.
Yeah, it has created a significant disconnect. And I think a lot of it is just when we are detached emotionally from others, when all it is words on a screen. Right.
That person that you're insulting, or that you're encouraging other people to assault or to treat poorly is no longer really human.
Right.
It's almost like they're an avatar in a video game, right? It's, they're just gonna respawn when the next round starts.
Yeah, it's just
right?
a Russian bot, so it doesn't matter.
So how do we? One of the things that came up and in this past, I guess it's been a couple of weeks now, was this rush for people to get away from what are the traditional, or I guess not traditional, but the big social media sites. That's the other danger with social media is who are the gatekeepers.
Right.
It's not an open forum necessarily, and that's been proven time and time again. It's not just people sharing ideas. It's actively controlling what people are able to see based on the political preferences of the people who are doing the moderating. And now so it's not the idea, Zuckerberg's original idea that this would be this great way for people to connect and share is now something very different from that ideal that he has tried to, or has suggested that places like Facebook should be.
Yeah. I think that's, in a way, it's almost sugarcoating it, because they have taken out the human aspect of it now as well. That before, if you were on social media and you said something that was mean or nasty, they required someone else to report that, and then a human being would evaluate that, and you had a human being that you could plead your case to. Now they have algorithms that do all of that, and AI machines that, you likely aren't even talking to an actual human being. It's just a computer program. And you have no recourse if they deem something that you say was unsavory. And their definition of what is unsavory is just, now it's become political opinions they don't agree with.
Yes. So the big rush in the last couple of weeks was people leaving for alternative versions of the same thing.
Right.
And as enticing as that might be, are we just going to mention the ones that everyone is jumping off to? I mean, Twitter's alternative is this platform called Parlay, and for the Facebook alternative, it's MeWe, and we are on both. And I have been since June, I think, way before this whole latest brouhaha when Parlay was signing up people like 2 million people a week. Are we just, one of the concerns that we should have if we're considering making these changes is, in doing so, are we just creating a new echo chamber somewhere else?
Yeah, and I see the allure to it. The allure is, well, here's this other platform where I won't be censored for my opinions.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, that's what's attracting so many people. And there's also the side of it too that the way that Facebook, especially Facebook, I don't think Twitter is quite as nefarious about this, but the way that Facebook uses your personal information and tracks all your activity online.
Yes.
That the idea of, I don't want to be a product that they are using to make money off. I don't want to be their revenue stream.
Correct.
So those who are jumping ship for that purpose, that's great. But it's, as you mentioned, it's like they're creating, it's like the conservative version of the CNN editing room.
Right.
So let me go to that space where I know that I can share my opinions with others who will agree with me.
Right. We need to be very careful that we don't just create a conservative safe space.
Yeah.
We should be encouraging everyone, liberals, conservatives, no matter what your political stripe is, to leave those traditional or the big robber baron, as they were called, the robber baron tech companies, for places where your opinions are free, are freely expressed. And we shouldn't look at these as this is a conservative version of whatever we were trying to escape.
Right.
The goal is free speech.
Here's another a philosophical aspect to think of as well, that social media, again, by going from one social media platform to another, you're not solving any problems, because the problem, at least as I see it, is how in many ways social media has created a disconnect between human beings. When you were to socialize in the past, you got together with people and saw them face to face and had a normal conversation. And now, it's even gotten to the point, I can remember the days before memes existed.
What?
Yeah. There was this time, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, where no one even knew what a meme was or how to properly say the word to begin with.
You mean, oh yeah,
is it
they
meme?
call it meme.
Is it meme? What is it?
Is it?
So now we've also gotten to the point where, and I'm guilty of this too, where you respond to somebody's comment or post on social media with just a funny picture or an animated GIF.
You mean there was a time when we actually had conversations and tried to convince people of our opinions without memes?
Yes. There was a time where they had these things called rotary phones, and there was no screen, and you had to either have all the phone numbers written down or memorize them in your head.
I tell my kids about party lines, and I think, what in the heck are you talking about?
There was a time where call waiting was not a concept.
Right. Or when it came along, you had to pay extra for it.
Yes. Busy signal, what the heck is that?
And one of the complaints that we're seeing from people who are jumping ship and who are going to some of these other platforms, one of the things that they're complaining about is, well, how do they make money? That they have this, like MeWe has this Premiere, or is it called Premiere? Something like that. It's like a premium version where you get extra stuff. And people are, of course, naturally, they're a little suspicious of any, for some reason, we have this idea that everything that we do online, all the technology should be free. I don't understand why that, but then we'll stand in line for a $1,200 cell phone. I don't really get that.
Yeah.
But so understand that if you're going to jump ship, these platforms are not as mature. They got some growing pains to go through, or they're going through currently because they're experiencing ridiculous growth. So I see, when I see people complaining that the thing that they've switched to is not as user friendly or doesn't have the same features that the thing that they left has, you want to smack them upside the head and just like, well, did you really want to leave or not?
Right.
Do you really want free speech or not? And maybe, I know this is a crazy idea, maybe pony up the $12 for the premium subscription thing and try to help them make it better.
Right. Or just try and think back to what Facebook was like circa 2005.
Right.
That's what most people don't, because I've seen those complaints too. Well, and for me personally, I haven't. Yes, I have accounts on MeWe and Parlay, but I haven't used those very much because my church has a good Facebook presence, and I'm just not going to quit using Facebook because there's a lot of people that watch the Sunday services, and I stopped doing that. I'm doing a disservice to the work of the gospel. But yeah, you have Facebook that's been around for at least 15 years. I believe 2005 is when it first came out. Maybe it was 2006. I don't know, but it was in that, it was that long ago. So think what cars were like. Good example. take a car from 1985 and a car from 2000 and compare the two. There's a lot that changes in 15 years when it comes to technology.
Yes.
So you have something that's, 6 months old, and you're pissing and moaning because, well, this isn't quite as fancy as something that's been around for 15 years.
Right.
That's like expecting a 6-month-old to be as athletic and skilled as a 15-year-old. It just doesn't work that way.
Right.
There's a reason the 15-year-old is dunking on the 6-month-old.
Yes. All right, that's all the time we have for today, folks. If you have any comments, any questions about what you heard here today, any complaints, visit our feedback page at armedlutheran.us/feedback. We would definitely love to hear from you. Next week, tune in for part 2 of this show. Things took an unexpected turn after the end of the recording here. We, like I mentioned at the very beginning, we recorded for over an hour, and the latter half of the show, about half the recording time, we spent talking tech tips, basically, talking about alternatives to mainstream and alternative media or social media, tips for how to keep your information safe as you surf the web. So be sure to tune in next week for episode number 244, as we will be sharing all that information with you. It was a lot of fun. Happy Thanksgiving to all of you. I hope you have a great week and are able to share that time with family and friends. Until we meet again next week in episode 244, keep shooting, keep praying. We'll talk to you next time.
John Bennett is the pastor at St. John's Lutheran Church in Willow Creek, Minnesota. For more information, visit stjohnswillowcreek.org. For show notes, be sure to visit our website at www.armedlutheran.us. Check out the Facebook page, The Armed Lutheran, or join our Facebook group, Fans of Armed Lutheran Radio. If you like what you hear, please leave us a comment on our feedback page at armedlutheran.us/feedback or a review on iTunes and let us know what you think. Thank you for listening to Armed Lutheran Radio, a member of the Self-Defense Radio Network.